The subway station breathes with life, chaotic yet strangely rhythmic. Footsteps click against the tiles, announcements echo in distorted tones, and a distant violin weaves a melancholy melody. To the untrained eye, this is just another ordinary day in the city, a mosaic of strangers, all moving toward their next destination. But in the midst of this frenzy stands Keanu Reeves. He isn't the Hollywood star here. He isn't the man gracing magazine covers or action-packed billboards. Here, he's just another passenger. A face in the crowd, blending in, but carrying a weight only he can feel. Keanu's eyes scan the platform. He isn't looking for anyone or anything in particular. In truth, he's looking for escape. Not from the world outside, but from the noise within. Fame has its perks, sure. But fame doesn't fill the void. Fame doesn't silence the questions that keep him up at night. This city, Keanu thinks, it's loud enough to drown out your thoughts if you let it. He smirks faintly at the irony. Even here, in the chaos, his mind finds no rest. The train is alive with energy, a cramped vessel of unspoken tension and fleeting connections. Keanu steps inside, his tall frame blending into the crowd, yet somehow commanding attention. He glances around the car, searching for an empty seat. But there's none. Commuters avoid eye contact, each absorbed in their own world. At the far end, an older woman sits alone, her bags spilling onto the seat beside her. Her expression is sharp, guarded, as if daring anyone to challenge her claim to the extra space. Keanu hesitates before approaching. His voice is calm, polite. "Excuse me, ma'am. Would you mind if I sit here?" The woman doesn't even look up. Her voice cuts through the murmurs of the train. "Find another seat," she snaps. "Must be nice, being rich and famous. Bet you don't hear no too often." Keanu steps back, his face impassive, but there's a flicker of something in his eyes, disappointment, perhaps, or resignation. Around him, passengers exchange awkward glances, unsure whether to intervene or stay silent. And then, from across the car, a young woman speaks up. Her voice is soft but firm. "You can take my seat," she offers, standing before he can refuse. Keanu smiles, his gratitude genuine. "Thank you." He sits, his shoulders relaxing slightly. The young woman stands nearby, holding onto a pole, her gaze meeting his briefly before looking away. In that small act of kindness, Keanu finds a glimmer of hope. Not everyone sees him as a symbol or a spectacle. Some still see him as just a person. The train sways through the underground labyrinth, the lights above flickering like the pulse of the city itself. Keanu leans against the cold glass of the window, his reflection staring back at him, a reflection of a man who's lived many lives but still seeks his place in this one. Around him, the car is alive with muted stories. A teenager sits cross-legged on the floor, headphones wrapped tightly around his head, lost in a world of his own creation. In his lap, a sketchbook brims with rough outlines and smudged charcoal, a dragon mid-flight, its wings stretching across the page. Keanu's gaze lingers on the boy's art, a faint smile tugging at his lips. It reminds him of simpler times, before scripts and cameras, when all he needed was a pencil and a scrap of paper to escape. Across the aisle, the young woman who offered her seat watches him. She's curious, but not intrusive. When their eyes meet, she smiles, a small, fleeting gesture, but one that feels genuine. "Nice to see people still draw," Keanu says, his voice breaking the silence. The teenager looks up, startled at first, then nods. "Yeah, helps me block out the noise, you know?" Keanu chuckles softly. "Yeah. I know." The boy grins, flipping the page to reveal another sketch, a hero standing tall, his features unfinished but already exuding strength. "You think he looks cool?" the boy asks. Keanu studies the sketch for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "He does. But you know what makes a hero?" The boy shakes his head. "It's not the cape, or the muscles, or even the battles they win," Keanu says. It's the fact that they keep going, even when it hurts. The words hang in the air, resonating not just with the boy, but with everyone within earshot. The train screeches to a halt, and the crowd moves as one, an uncoordinated tide spilling onto the platform. Keanu steps off, his feet hitting the worn tiles with a sense of relief. The air here feels lighter, less oppressive than the confines of the train. But he isn't alone. The young woman who gave him her seat follows close behind, her steps hesitant yet deliberate. In her hand is a small book, its edges frayed from years of handling. "Hey," she calls softly, her voice barely cutting through the noise of the station. Keanu turns, his expression calm but curious. She holds up the book, her cheeks tinged with nervousness. I thought you might like this. It's just a journal I keep. Poems, thoughts, stuff like that. You don't have to read it, but I don't know. You seem like someone who might understand." Keanu takes the journal, his hands gentle as if holding something fragile. "Thank you," he says, his voice warm but tinged with surprise. "Why give it to me?" She shrugs, her gaze dropping to the ground. "Sometimes, it's easier to share things with strangers. No expectations, you know?" Keanu nods, his fingers tracing the edges of the worn cover. He understands more than she knows, the weight of expectations, the solace of anonymity. "What's your name?" he asks. "Lila," she replies, finally meeting his gaze. "Thank you, Lila," he says. "I'll take care of it." The moment stretches, filled with an unspoken connection. Lila smiles, the kind of smile that's both hopeful and bittersweet, before turning to leave. As she disappears into the crowd, Keanu opens the journal, flipping to a random page. The words are raw, honest, and hauntingly beautiful. They speak of loss, resilience, and the quiet strength found in everyday moments. For the first time in a long while, Keanu feels something shift within him, a spark of inspiration, a reminder of why he keeps going. The city at night is a different world. The chaos of the day recedes, leaving behind a quieter, more introspective version of itself. Keanu walks through the streets, his footsteps echoing softly against the pavement. A diner glows in the distance, its neon sign buzzing faintly, a beacon for the sleepless and the wandering. He pauses outside, peering through the window. Inside, a man in a uniform flips burgers on a griddle while a couple shares a milkshake in the corner booth. For a moment, Keanu considers going in. But instead, he keeps walking, his reflection trailing him in the puddles beneath his feet. The rain has long stopped, but its memory lingers in the air, cool and crisp. He passes an old movie theater, its marquee barely holding on to its last few letters. Now showing, Classics Night. Keanu stops, staring at the faded posters displayed in the glass case. One of them is for The Matrix. He chuckles to himself, the irony not lost on him. A rustling sound pulls his attention. In the alley beside the theater, a stray cat perches on a dumpster, its green eyes glowing in the dark. "Hey there," Keanu says softly, crouching down. The cat tilts its head, curious but cautious. Keanu extends a hand, and after a moment, the cat steps closer, its movements deliberate and graceful. "You're just like me, huh? Wandering through this city, looking for something, or nothing." He smiles as the cat brushes against his hand, its fur damp from the night air. He sits there for a while, the world continuing its quiet march around him. The distant hum of cars, the faint laughter of strangers, the flicker of a street lamp above, it all blends into a symphony of solitude. In this moment, Keanu isn't an actor, a celebrity, or even a man searching for meaning. He's just here. Existing. Breathing. And somehow, that feels like enough. The diner door jingles as Keanu finally decides to step inside, the warmth of the place enveloping him instantly. It smells like coffee, fried food, and something sweet baking in the back, comforting, familiar. He slides onto a stool at the counter, nodding at the waitress who greets him with a smile. She's in her 50s, her hair tied back in a neat bun, her apron slightly wrinkled but clean. "What can I get you?" she asks, her voice tinged with the kind of kindness that only comes from years of seeing all walks of life pass through her doors. "Just coffee," Keanu replies. "Black." She nods, pouring him a cup and setting it in front of him. "Long night?" "Something like that," he says, taking a sip. In the corner, a young man with a guitar strums softly, his music filling the space without overwhelming it. The melody is simple, almost melancholic, but beautiful in its honesty. Keanu listens, his fingers tapping lightly against the mug. He glances at the waitress. "He's good." She smiles. "That's Jake. Comes in every Friday night. Plays for tips, but I think he just likes the company." Keanu nods, watching as a couple of patrons drop a few bills into the open guitar case on the floor. Jake looks up, nodding his thanks without missing a note. "You play?" the waitress asks. "Not really. Used to mess around with a bass when I was younger, but nothing serious." She laughs. "You should pick it up again. Music's good for the soul." Keanu smiles, her words resonating with him. He watches as Jake finishes his song, the small audience offering polite applause. Jake looks over at Keanu, their eyes meeting briefly. Keanu raises his mug in a silent toast, and Jake smiles before launching into another tune. For the first time in what feels like forever, Keanu feels a sense of calm. It's not happiness, exactly, he's not sure he remembers what that feels like. But it's something close. A quiet contentment, a momentary escape from the weight of everything else. And for now, that's enough. The park is empty, save for Keanu and the night. He sits on a wooden bench beneath the soft glow of a street lamp, the faint hum of the city a backdrop to the stillness around him. A notebook lies open on his lap, its pages mostly blank. A pen rests in his hand, but he hasn't written anything yet. He looks up at the sky, where a sliver of the moon peeks through the clouds. "Why is it so hard to put it into words?" he murmurs to himself. The trees sway gently in the breeze, their leaves whispering secrets he can't quite decipher. Keanu taps the pen against the notebook, staring at the blank page as if it holds all the answers he's searching for. "Maybe it's not about finding the right words," he says, his voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe it's about feeling them." He writes a single sentence, "Life is beautiful, even when it hurts." The words feel both true and inadequate, a fleeting thought captured in ink. He leans back, letting the cool night air wash over him. A jogger passes by, nodding a silent greeting. Keanu returns the nod, watching as the figure disappears into the mist. It's a reminder that everyone is on their own journey, carrying their own burdens, chasing their own dreams. Keanu flips to another page in the notebook, sketching absent-mindedly. The drawing takes shape, a tree, its roots stretching deep into the ground, its branches reaching for the sky. Roots and branches, he muses. The past and the future. But what about the present? He closes the notebook, tucking it under his arm as he stands. The park feels alive in its stillness, a sanctuary amidst the chaos of the world. He takes a deep breath, letting the moment sink in. As he walks away, the street lamp flickers, casting a brief shadow before returning to its steady glow. It's a small, almost imperceptible detail, but one that stays with him as he leaves the park and re-enters the city's embrace. The morning comes quietly, the city stretching and yawning as the first rays of sunlight break over the horizon. Keanu stands on the balcony of a high-rise apartment, a steaming mug of coffee warming his hands. Below him, the city begins to stir. Cars inch along the streets, their headlights fading as the sun takes over. A cyclist weaves through traffic, a newspaper tucked under one arm. Street vendors set up their carts, the smell of fresh bagels and brewed coffee rising to meet him. Keanu takes a sip of his coffee, savoring the moment. It's not often he allows himself the luxury of simply being, of watching the world without feeling the need to participate in it. He thinks about the night before, the diner, the park, the cat, the fleeting moments of connection and solitude. Each experience feels like a brushstroke on the canvas of his life, incomplete on their own but beautiful when seen together. A bird lands on the railing beside him, its feathers ruffled by the morning breeze. It chirps once, twice, before taking off again, its wings catching the golden light. Keanu smiles. "Even the smallest things can be beautiful," he says softly, almost to himself. He sets the mug down, pulling out his notebook once more. This time, the words flow easily. Life isn't about the destination. It's about the moments in between, the quiet ones, the loud ones, the ones that break your heart, and the ones that mend it. He pauses, letting the thought settle before continuing. We're all just passing through, trying to leave something behind. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. The sound of a car horn below pulls him back to the present. He closes the notebook, a sense of peace washing over him. As the city comes alive, Keanu steps back inside, the sunlight streaming through the windows, illuminating the room in a warm, golden glow. He doesn't know what the day will bring, but for the first time in a long time, he feels ready to face it.